Nigel Farage, the former Brexit leader and, of course, GB News host. He joins us now from London. Great man. I started off tonight's program by talking about what's happening in China, that it feels like the protests that are happening in China right now, look, the CCP ain't going anywhere, but for people to be able to take to the streets, to organise in a fashion where the government isn't able to rip them off the streets because they're holding up the blank pieces of paper, the Western world should be starting to speak with the support for those people like they do for the Iranian women. But there's not much of it. A little something from Sunak last night, but the world's not really jumping to the defence of these people, are they?
Good Lord, no. There are far too many people in politics and big business and media making much too much money out of China for any criticism to be allowed. And you mentioned Rishi Sunak. Sunak said last night the golden era of Britain's relations with China are over. Now, the golden era is a period about 7 years ago when the British Prime Minister, David Cameron, the Chancellor, George Osborne, let China into our nuclear industry, let China into our telecoms industry, so that they could steal our industrial secrets, spy on us, do whatever they could to diminish our role in the world. But it was a golden era for the friends of the Conservative Party, for big businessmen, and people sitting as non-execs on the boards of Chinese companies. It wasn't a golden era for Britain, and we just need to understand that money, right across the Western world, money is the reason we don't condemn human rights abuses and all the dreadful things that regime do. I promise you, it's corruption at the highest level. I've seen it myself.
Well, also, it's this scenario where there is no one who pushes back on the proven situation that people, the Uyghurs, are being used as slave labour in part to build things like solar panels. There are some little dots of the world that have said, no, anything that comes from that region, we're not taking it. You would think that that would be the easiest of things for people to turn around and do. But the truth is that so much of what the Western world takes for granted is made in a sweatshop somewhere. Someone somewhere suffered for us to have it, and we just don't seem to care. We care when we're tweeting, but we don't care when we're consuming.
Well, that's right. And we've been happy to outsource so much of our industrial production of clothes, of wind turbines, of solar panels. We're happy to have, well, I always used to think of it as cheap Chinese rubbish, and still quite a lot of it is. But we've been happy to outsource. Well, we've been happy to outsource so much of this. And so we've now finished up through our own strategic stupidity, actually becoming quite dependent on many things that are made in China. Look, at some point in time, the only way we stop China from continued human rights abuses and possible invasion of Taiwan is a very big economic blockade. But we have to understand, as with Ukraine, when we put sanctions on, it's going to hurt us too. So we need perhaps all of us to start thinking about an industrial strategy where we become a little bit less dependent
100%.
On imports from China. And as for the protests, well, look, I'm very surprised because any attempt to protest in Hong Kong tends to be pretty brutally put down. This must be on a much bigger scale across China than perhaps even we understand. Otherwise, they would have cracked down, in my view. So something quite big is going on. But as ever with China, it's tough to get a big picture.